Hello everyone, welcome. We're going to talk about gate or gene key 53. Before I do, if you'd like to join me in a 90-minute community circle where we do nervous system embodiment practice as well as touch on human design, you can find the link below. I'm running that on Saturday, July 15th. All right, so let's start on the human design side and then move to the gene key side. So gate 53 is known as the gate of starting in both quantum and traditional language. It's in the collective circuit. And this gate highlights as it transits, or if you have it in your chart, it highlights the ability to respond with your right authority to begin things, to trust in your right timing and to know what right timing feels like, and to watch where you might burn yourself out in order to get things finished. It's also kind of highlighting that you might need other people to complete projects. You're not the finisher necessarily. On the shadow side, we see this as a reaction to getting something started or the fear of beginning anything because of past failures and starting outside of right timing and then feeling like a failure because you weren't in tune with right timing. On the full expression of this, it's to be attuned to the right timing and to sit with the inspiration and cultivate a relationship with inspiration so that you know when to begin. This gate is very prominent in my chart, and I spent a lot of my life under that pressure to start things, as well as burning myself out to finish things. And it's been in the last, say, couple of years, it's becoming even more and more embodied in me now to be able to tap into the right timing of something and also to not be swayed by any external forces or conditioning of shoulds. Right? That conditioning against right timing is super important to notice for yourself because our world is very much in that just do it phase, right? Like just go out and do it, just make it happen. And then the fear of scarcity, of missing out if you don't do it right away. And so it's very much allowing yourself to feel into what feels right and when it feels right. And for me, it's an internal knowing where it's like something just clicks into place, and it's almost as if my root gives me a pulse to be like, yep, now's the time. And I'm not forcing myself. And so I've found that I have less tendency to burn out or get bitter. On the gene key side, we have the Shadow of Immaturity, the Gift of Expansion, and the Siddhi of Superabundance. So this shadow, Richard Rudd talks about that most beginnings have a bit of fear in them, which can make things more difficult or end up in the demise of something. And he says, begin as you mean to go on. And I've been really contemplating this, and perhaps it's just because I have not moved through this shadow fully yet, because this is prominent in my chart. And maybe it's just where we are on the consciousness of humanity, but I think fear is normal. Simply because we are these beings in these current bodies that have these nervous systems that are wired to what we experienced as children, that we are attuned to what we were raised in, the nervous system of our parents, and we have a negativity bias in our bodies and brains for survival. And so I think some element of fear is very natural to these physical bodies, It's just whether or not we allow that fear to grab us and lead our decision-making process. Who knows? Maybe fear, maybe our bodies at some point transcend that ancient, primal, fear-based fight, flight, freeze response that we have in it. I don't know. On the other side of this immaturity shadow, it's where we actually see ourselves separate from nature, and where we have a hard time accepting that death is a part of life, and that I will die and you will die and everyone and everything is going to have a death and rebirth cycle, because everything is constantly passing away and beginning again. We see this shadow play out in our world through greed, where you see companies that are just like, we need to keep growing and keep growing and keep growing and keep growing. And there's a real dismissal or rejection of death or anything that might need to fall away. When we see this shadow play out in one of two ways, we've got the solemn or fickle. And solemn is the repression of fear, so much that we push it away and we become very fixed in one way of being, and we don't cope very well with change. Or fickle, where we move from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next, which was how this shadow played out for me quite a bit. Moving from one thing to the next, combined with the 3 line and my open G center, it sometimes was wonderful and I learned lots, and sometimes it was painful. So on the journey to the gift of expansion, we almost want to take that beginner's mind, that you have the opportunity to begin again and again and again. I hear this a lot with clients who become disappointed in themselves if they've let a practice fall away, or they started a practice and then they weren't consistent. And there's this judgment around needing to constantly show up. And in some way, that is part of the expansion process, and part of creating a new practice is actually there's going to be contraction. And so if your practice is meditating or breathing or yoga or walking in the morning or simply creating awareness as you're doing the dishes, if you forget to do it at one point, or you're tired one day, or you just don't want to, or there's resistance, that resistance is part of the expansion, because you need to have contraction in order to expand. It is just a part of this world that we live in. So you won't ever have one without the other. And so using that beginner's mind, instead of beating self up for not doing the practice, it's like, okay, I can begin again and again and again. Because in that expansion place, we have evolution. And in anything that evolves, there is a transformation where something is no longer exists in the form that it used to be, which is essentially a contraction or a death. And this gift demands a transcendence of our personal opinions, that what I believe is true, or that what you believe is true, or that what that person says is true. And it's more of a turning ourselves over to the expansion and unfolding of life. It's really this devotion to the expansion and the contraction of what happens in life. This Siddhi is called Superabundance. And I really like what Richard Rudd says here. He talks about the Buddha's definition of karma and reincarnation, and that we kind of have it all backwards in our world. And got a sense of this in when I used to do Akashic record readings, is that like if I have a memory from a past life, it's not necessarily just my memory. It's also the memory of many other people because we are all super connected. And if we look at this in through the lens of human design, the design crystal, when you die in the mythology of human design, the design crystal goes back into the earth, which means that anything that I've experienced or you've experienced in this body in this lifetime is going to go back into the earth. And so karma reincarnates based on our actions. Sorry, I'm saying that wrong. What reincarnates is not our individual souls, but the karma of the actions that we've played out. So if we look at what's happening in the world right now, we have all contributed to that. It is not just one person or one group of people. The karma that's playing out, what we watch is playing out, is this reincarnation of actions that many individual human forms have taken over many, many, many lifetimes. And when we tap into superabundance, goes beyond the material. And just like I was talking about how what reincarnation truly is not an individual soul, it's all of the souls combined. It is the conglomerate of the one source, that there's this turning over into us being nothingness and everything all at the same time. I wonder what that will feel like. So from my guides, the Fae, I pulled the Oracle card, the Piper. Sometimes I pull the cards to just stimulate what wants to come through. And the Piper came through to say, this is the gene key of the watcher. You must become the witness and become detached to the ups and downs of life. Not unemotional, but detached to what you experience. And it's calling us to find the gift in everything, to see the beauty in devastation and the pain in the blooming of a flower, because it's all the same. It's all one. It is all everything, and it is all nothing. Thank you very much for watching. Please like, share, or subscribe if you feel called. And remember to check out the links below in different ways you can work with me. Beautiful day.